If you've ever tried to decorate in Animal Crossing, you'll know it can be really hard. Items don't sit in the right places, custom codes can be hard to find, and you spend hours looking at inspirational islands you find online, only to realize that your island doesn't look anything like those. With so much going into designing an island, it can be very easy to make a mistake, and if you're finding a build of yours isn't coming together like it should, then you may be making one of these 9 decorating mistakes in New Horizons. When you start decorating for the first time, it can be difficult to understand how the creators online seem to make their builds look far better than yours, even if you're using exactly the same items. There's a very strong possibility that the creators you're taking inspiration from are using custom codes. This doesn't mean that you need to design your own codes, as most island designers don't create their own, and instead they browse the portals to find the perfect code to fit their theme. And just like some of your favorite designers, you can also search for the right codes to add a little bit of extra detail onto your island. There are literally custom codes for everything you could possibly think of, and you can use different codes to really make your island stand out. A custom code path can be used to add more texture and visual interest to your island, both by giving a unique walkway from one build to another, or to layer under items you're using in a build to make your build fit more naturally into your island. However, you can also customize different items in the game with custom codes to make them look completely different from what others have used on their own island, which can add additional story to your island. You can customize the tabletop pop displays with fairy codes to make it look like you have little fairies flying around your island, or you can use a custom code on a simple panel to create fake buildings or other unique structures. If you aren't using custom codes to add dimension onto your island, I highly recommend doing so, as you can add so many unique touches to your island and give it a completely new lease of life. Have you ever found yourself with a few ideas that you want to get built on your island, which you just have to do right now? That motivation to get working on your island is amazing, and it can be the difference between finishing an island and completely giving up on it. But having that motivation can lead to a mistake that I've made myself countless times: not actually being prepared to start building. We've all done this. We know what we want to build, you run to your storage to start pulling items to use, and then you find you're missing some crucial things that you need to get the build done. So then you end up spending the next 2 hours just gathering items and resources and not actually building, which then kills your motivation to make progress on your island. In order to avoid doing this, I found the best option is to just spend an evening listing out everything I need to make a build idea work. Think about the specific items you're missing and whether you need more customization kits for DIY furniture items to save yourself an additional run to Halves Island. Do you need to find the DIY recipe or the resources to make some furniture items so that, if worst comes to worst and you run out of furniture, you can easily make another one without having to waste time going to a treasure island? It's so much easier to get the most out of a decorating session when you've planned out everything you need and prepared for your build ahead of time. Seriously, take a look through your storage ahead of a build and check that you have everything you need so that when you do have the motivation to get into a build, you aren't wasting playtime just trying to get prepared for the next thing you want to make on your island. Something you may find yourself doing when looking for ideas on what to make for your next build is to take a look at some inspiration online. There are so many amazing islands the Animal Crossing community makes in tons of different themes, which are perfect to get ideas from. However, if you look at too many of these islands, you may start to feel bad about your own island and think that it will never be as good as theirs. Comparing islands is a huge mistake you can make when going through the design process, and it can prevent you from making further progress on your island. No one likes to feel they aren't good enough, and when you see stunning islands online, it can be difficult to avoid that comparison. If you're struggling with comparison, it's honestly not just you that feels like it. Every island designer has felt bad about their island at some point. It's worth keeping in mind that no 2 islands are exactly the same. Even if 2 designers have the same map layout, the way they terraform and decorate is going to be completely different. What looks good for one person won't work for someone else, and that's completely fine. If there's something you don't like about your island, you can always change it, but it doesn't have to look exactly like someone else's island, and it's perfect just the way you design it. Speaking of looking at inspiration for your next build, you may have found some really interesting builds that you want to try out on your own island. Maybe you've found a large museum entrance that you like, or someone has made a fake building which you want to try recreating on your own island. It's great to have these big ideas and they can motivate you to work on your island, but if you're struggling with recreating these builds, you may be making the mistake of picking something which is too big for you to work on right now. There's nothing wrong with finding something you like and wanting to give it a go, but if you find you're becoming overwhelmed with making something that big, then you may want to work on some smaller builds instead which only use a couple of items whilst you work your way towards making something bigger on your island. Some of my favourite builds have been made with just a couple of my favourite items in the game and some custom codes to fill an empty space or to make a walkway feel more vibrant when you walk from one build to another on a dream address. And these smaller builds can really help keep you going when you're struggling with motivation to finish your island. When you're looking to design an island, you're likely going to be looking for the perfect map to decorate. Maybe you found something you like, but it isn't quite what you were looking for, but you have some ideas which can work. However, when you get stuck into decorating the island for the first time, you realize that the design you have in mind isn't going to work, and you have no idea why. When you settle for a map which doesn't quite work for you, it can be really difficult to make your designs come to life. At that point, you have a couple of options. If the changeable parts of your island are the issue, then you can always move them around and re-terraform until it looks like you want. But if it's the location of your resident services or the size of your beaches which is the problem, then you will have no choice but to delete your save data and try another map. Don't make the mistake of settling for a map which you aren't happy with. If you're struggling to find a map that you think can work, take a look around some of the islands you get and ask yourself if you can picture where your shops, museum and houses will go. If you can't picture how your island is going to work for your decorating plans, then it's time to reset until you find a map you prefer. Once you've found a map and you've played through the start of the game, you may decide that you want to get ahead of decorating a bit and get a little bit prepared by moving trees and breaking the rocks that you see. So you shake your fruit trees, munch on a few pieces of fruit and start digging up some of the trees. There's nothing wrong with doing this, but there is a far better method which you can use to clear your island easily. Use turnips instead of fruit or crops if you want to make your cleanup quicker. The biggest benefit of doing this is that each turnip you eat gives you 10 energy compared to only 1 bit of energy that you get from each piece of fruit. If you're planning a cleanup session on your island, it's worth keeping a couple of stacks of turnips in your inventory as they will ultimately take up less space than fruit and will give you more than enough energy to get everything done. However, if you're just decorating and you only have a few trees to move, you may not want to use turnips, as if you haven't used up all of your energy, you may find yourself accidentally picking up a tree that you just popped down. In those cases, you may want to use a meal or some fruit, or keep a toilet nearby so that when you're done moving rocks or trees, you can get rid of excess energy that you aren't going to use. Speaking of island cleanup, one thing you may consider using on your island to keep your weeds under control is the Beautiful Island Ordinance. And I get why you would want to do that, because the Beautiful Island Ordinance can prevent weeds from spreading. However, it also has a major disadvantage which can affect island designers. You get a lot of extra flowers. At first, this doesn't sound like a bad thing. Flowers are better than weeds after all. However, if you aren't keeping a close eye on the number of flowers spawning, you may find yourself breaking quite a lot of shovels just to keep them under control. Personally, I wouldn't recommend having Beautiful Island on and opting instead to take early bird or late night ordinances instead. These change the waking patterns of your villagers, which can make decorating easier. But if you're sure you want to keep Beautiful Island on, then the best thing you're going to want to do is use transparent tiles around your flowers to prevent them multiplying accidentally whilst you're working on your island. One mistake that I see a lot of people make when they're first starting to design an island is thinking that you can pick every villager you want straight away. I hate to burst your bubble, but sadly this isn't something you can do right away. New Horizons limits you to have certain villager personalities at the start of the game, with your 2 starter villagers being a sisterly and a jock, and your first campsite villager always being a smug. You have no choice in these 3 villagers, you have to take them regardless of who they are, but you will be able to move them out later. The next 3 villagers though, you get a little bit more of a say over. When you place the 3 number plots on your island, you'll only be able to find a peppy, normal and lazy villager to take these spots, but you can hunt for the villager you want within these personalities when you unlock the plot. So if you have a list of dreamies you're hoping to find, You may want to double check their personalities, and if any of them fit into these 3 personality types, then it's worth getting them earlier rather than later so you aren't wasting time hunting for all of your dreamies after you've moved in these 6 villagers. You put a lot of love and care into your island, and when you're designing an island you're proud of, you want to be able to share it with others. When you're partway through an island, it's tempting to save your game and call that it. But there's one mistake you're making that could cause you to lose your island and never finish it at all. If you didn't know, cloud saving is not turned on by default in New Horizons, and if something happens to your Switch, like you lose it or you break it, you will lose the island you've worked so hard on. Whenever you start a new game or you've deleted your save data, island backups are turned off, and it's your responsibility as a player to enable them to protect your island. You can double check you have them on by looking in the bottom left hand corner of the start screen before you press A to enter your island. If you see that this says island backups are not set, you need to press the minus button to go into the settings of the game and turn them on. When you do this, Tom Nook will be in a dark room and he'll give you the option to talk about island backups. When asked if you want to turn them on, press enable. This will turn on cloud saving and protect you from losing your island should the worst happen. No one wants to see their hard work going to waste, and if you're making this mistake, I would encourage you to turn on cloud saving to keep your island safe so you can eventually release your dream address when your island is done and not have to worry about losing your island. Decorating is one of the unique parts of New Horizons, which separates it from any other titles within the Animal Crossing franchise. Although it can be hard to get stuck into decorating and fairly easy to make a mistake, it allows you to showcase your creativity in a completely different way than you will find in any other game. And if you want to get stuck into island design but need some help to make the process easier, watch this video next where I went through some professional decorating tips that I wish I'd known when I first started designing islands. And I'll see you over there.